When I was doing my journey around the world overland between 2012 and 2020, I arrived in Alaska after spending about 9 months in Japan, working there as a professor. And after hitchhiking and camping through Japan with a friend of mine in 2015, basically at the time I wanted to do my round the world journey just overland and overseas. But I had already had some intense adventures, especially in the beginning of my journey, as I couldn't cross Pakistan. And I had to go to India, taking the plane from Dubai. I was playing the guitar on the street. I mean, long stories. I put you a link of my first book about this journey, if you're interested. But anyway, I had long accepted that basically, yes, I would take the boat. I wanted to take the boat. All the crews, they were coming from the tropics, and basically they were full. So I had to accept that I would take the plane from Japan to Alaska. I arrived in Alaska, and basically I had 17 hours of time difference, and I was there in July. Basically, it's slightly after the summer solstice there, the 21st of June, when you have the longest days of the year, and I was very disturbed. So I spent 5 or 6 weeks camping in Alaska, making my way through, to the north. I wanted to go to the very north of Alaska and then to the very south tip of South America, crossing the whole continent like I had done between France and Japan somehow. So I was making my way to the Yukon, to Canada. I was camping on the way. But even though it was July, so after the summer solstice and the longest days of the year, it was still daylight all the time. And especially because I crossed the polar circle to the north. Well, actually, I wanted to go all the way to the Arctic Sea, which I didn't do. I stopped like 13 kilometers just before, because basically the last part of the highway was owned by an oil company. So I decided I didn't want to participate in this process. So as crazy as it might sound, in my principles, I couldn't accept that. It was $60, but it wasn't for the money, it was for the principle. Even though I was traveling with little money at that time. I couldn't sleep at night in the beginning, where there was no night anyway. So even with a t-shirt or whatever fabric on top of my eyes, because I'm very sensitive to the light, especially daylight. So even with something on my head, I would naturally wake up. So there was no getting asleep and waking up process at all. I was kind of napping during the day after doing some stretching, some yin yoga, some walk in nature. It's Alaska, so I was totally immersed in nature anyway. And it helped me a lot to reconnect with some kind of yin activities. So when I talk about yin, I've done a specific video about the yin and yang, especially in a more metaphorical, allegorical approach of the yin, the feminine energy, and the yang, the masculine energy, that we all have inside us. We tend to have imbalances and to visit extremes at some point. So basically, when I was in Alaska, I had lots of local friends on the way, whether I was meeting them like while hitchhiking or camping, or I remember I met this beautiful local family while hitchhiking. Somehow, in brackets, long story cut short, this synchronicity allowed me to visit the magic bus from Into the Wild, John Krakauer for the book and Sean Penn for the movie, which actually inspired me a lot, especially in the beginning of my journey. But anyway, at that point, I think I realized I was aware of the patterns of the sun and the moon. And actually, I had already made the choice to leave my old routine behind, my more conventional life, to shift cycles in the long term and to embrace the unknown through my journey around the world. It was kind of the first time I could, in a practical way, introspect and integrate about the daylight patterns. So in today's video, we're going to try to debate, explore the influence of the patterns of the sun, of the moon, and somehow how we are related to the sun calendar also, and the way we disconnected from the moon calendar and from the moon in general, and how it affects our daily lives. So when I was in Alaska, I had all these friends, and basically I realized that lots of women, they were working, for example, like as carpenters. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be here if I were to judge or create more separation between men and women. This is not the goal. But there are stereotypes, and again, they exist for a reason. I also believe that men shouldn't be just manly, that real men cry, as I say all the time. And in vulnerability, in sensitivity, there are all these existential answers that we're all looking for. But I also realized that beyond the judgment as a fact, I mean, there were these patterns. The harsher the climate, the further from the equator. And basically, the more we could find these imbalances. So we can argue that there are no imbalances in this universe, and I kind of agree with that, no problem. But when I say imbalances, I mean that between the summer solstice, for instance, and the winter solstice, you have a huge difference. So if you live in a four-season climate, well, during the winter, it can be nighttime at 4 or 5 p.m. And it's not completely bright around, concerning the daylight before 8 or 9 a.m. So days are very short, okay? Nothing new here. And the opposite close to the summer solstice, whether in the northern or southern hemisphere. So of course there is a balance throughout the year. We go further into extremes, but overall there is this balance. So it's super important to take this into consideration. What I'm trying to say here is, like, we neglect a lot the influence of the daylight patterns into our daily lives and what we do in terms of this yin and yang energy, feminine and masculine, and this balance, and how we can be more present and conscious about these extremes we're going into anything in life in order to find this middle point. We can be more aware of these patterns by following the moon calendar. It's all about the moon. So the moon calendar was officially turned away by Julius Caesar in 45 BC. Before, we were living with the moon calendar. And then in 1582, we went from the Julian calendar, from Julius Caesar, to the Gregorian calendar from Pope Gregory XIII, with which we're still living today. But it's been confusing because, for instance, in the United States, there was some differences in the dates these calendars were adopted somehow. So there was already lots of confusion in the world. But I think it's important to understand that we shifted to the sun calendar, yes, in a scientific, astronomical perspective of catching up in a heliocentric system, about making sure that we have coherent length of the solar year. What I'd like to discuss here is the impact, the influence it has had to actually disconnect ourselves from the moon calendar. Because the solar calendar, regardless of the scientific perspective, I believe in a sociological or psychological perspective. It's a calendar that we need to grow in a capitalist and corporatist, you call it whatever you want, society. To be productive, as we've discussed in my video about the yin and the yang. It's super important to take into consideration these polarities of yin and yang in the signs. And understanding that the sun is yang, it's the masculine divine, and it's the day. We need the day and we need the night, which is yin. The moon is yin, feminine, because it represents our creativity, our art and our feminine divine over all, men or women. At the end of the day, all these Eastern philosophies, they still follow the moon calendar. It's like, okay, it's a luni-solar calendar, so it's an adaptation to the Western world as well and society. But for instance, Chinese New Year takes place on the second new moon after the winter solstice. Even Eastern, like, did you know that Easter is connected with the lunar calendar? Easter Sunday always takes place after the full moon, which follows the spring equinox. That's why it changes every year. So not only it is oriented like as a productive, active way, but also because we are told to celebrate some specific emotions in specific time of the year. I'm sure you can understand that it is very manipulative in a consumerist and productive way that correspond to the solar calendar. Well, how do we do that? Whether we live in a super extreme climate and daylight patterns throughout the year, or whether which I would tend to do, we live in a more balanced pattern close to the equator. That's why we enjoy so much being close to the equator under the tropics. But again, we completely neglect this impact that's the daylight pattern, the sun, the masculine energy, the yang energy that allows us to keep going, to be productive, to be delusional to ourselves in this society. Because we are the ones who make choices, and we all have the choice. And we participate. Of course, I'm participating in the system. We cannot go away from it or totally. We weren't born in a monastery. We have a different purpose in life, something else to understand. So yeah, we can go to ashrams and do vipassana courses or whatever, but we should face life, face our emotions, introspect, and integrate. And for this purpose, we need the moon. So how do? We need to reconnect with the moon calendar. We need to reconnect with the moon phases and cycles. It may seem even more obvious for women because of the menstrual cycle. And we make a video about that at some point. Yes, I totally believe that the menstrual cycles are connected with the moon calendar. So how do we want women to be connected with their menstruation and take it as something sacred and not something which is demonized and misunderstood? How do we want to understand the differences between men and women if men don't understand the menstrual cycle? And even women, they don't understand it in the first place. Sorry, most of them, maybe not if you're here, but I mean, we have to speak out here, and in order to unite, to understand these mysteries, because at the end of the day, we're here on this physical plane for this reason, to actually understand the mysteries between men and women. And it's not opposite, it's totally complementary, because we have to understand again that we all have these yin and yang energies inside us, and this is totally connected with the daylight pattern, especially with the moon calendar. We need to include more art, fun, spontaneity, to embrace the unknown, to embrace our artistic sides by reconnecting with the moon calendar and the moon phases. Because yes, we all like artists and we should all embrace our moon regardless of the way we manifest it and express it on this physical plane. That basically we can be productive while being artistic, not like stuck in the mind in a flowy way. No, we should all be independent, men and women, but without growing the gap and the separation between us through machismo, through sexism, through feminism, I mean in an extreme kind of way. It's not gonna work. And to me, one of the only ways we can really understand each other is through the moon calendar, the reconnection. So yes, we need to be connected with the sun calendar. We all have appointments, dates and stuff. Yes, we should, yes, definitely celebrate birthdays as a solar revolution, as something important energetically, emotionally in our cycles, on our path. Why not celebrating Christmas, whatever, but to think out of the box, to get out of these stereotypes, cliches and limitative processes and conventions, if we really want to grow, like to be ourselves, to reconnect with our true essence and true nature. Thank you so much for watching this video, really from all my heart and soul, because of course I kind of know where I'm going with this, but it comes from a very spontaneous, vulnerable space. Not because I'm going to be judged, that's probably part of the game, but because I'm being true to myself, and I love taking experiences in life not as right or wrong, that everything is always aligned. And from the moment our intention is honest and authentic, it cannot really go wrong. They are just experiences. And this is just a beautiful experience, an experiment. I believe we all are the kind of guinea pigs of our own experiment in life, and regardless of our judgments and beliefs, when it comes even to life after death or reincarnation or whatever, this life is unique as it is, and we should enjoy each second. But how can we enjoy each second if we're never present, always stuck in the past or projecting ourselves in the future? I'm not saying that we shouldn't take the past as a beautiful experience, that we can sublime in the present moment and defining future possibilities, but out of an infinity of possibilities in every moment. And I'm convinced that throughout my work and research and the hundreds of people I've worked with until now, beautiful people, reconnecting with the moon calendar, for having experienced it myself as well when I was especially living in Mexico. Seeing the faces of the moon also visually, because that's one of the problems we have in 4-season climates most of the time. Because also that, apart from exceptions, the weather is very bad. So we never really see the sky, we never really see the moon, we never really see the stars, the nights, especially like summer solstice. So it's another way in which we completely disconnect with the moon, with our emotions. So how do we want to understand ourselves and therefore other people if we don't understand and we even deny our emotions? Again, it comes from a pure intention, and I don't want it to be a hassle for you, but if you like the content of what I'm doing, it's always a great support and love if you can like, comment the video, share the channel, because I cannot do it alone, and that's one of the things I've realized at some point. It's nice to be independent, to embrace our emotions until we can complete one another. But yes, there are some challenging processes on the way. So thank you for being present in my life, for supporting me through the process. Namaste.